This is a Magic the Gathering card that you are not playing in your commander decks, but you're going to see that there are many, many lives after death. This is a card called Lifeline. Let's check out the Oracle text and read why this thing is busted to hell and back. For 5 generic mana, it's an artifact. Whenever a creature dies, if another creature is on the battlefield, return the first card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So basically what this card is saying is that unless there's a board wipe, if a creature dies, it is going to come back to the battlefield at the end of the turn as long as it's still in the graveyard. The first thing I want to point out is that it says the beginning of the next end step, which does not have to be your end step. It can also be the end step of each of your opponents. So for example, let's take a card like Alchemist's Apprentice that has a really simple text of you sacrifice it and draw a card. So you play the Alchemist's Apprentice, you sacrifice it to draw a card. At the beginning of your end step, the Apprentice comes back into play, you can sacrifice it again to draw another card. Now during your next opponent's turn, the Apprentice comes back in, you can sacrifice it to draw a card. Next opponent, sacrifice, draw a card at their end step. Next opponent, at their end step, sacrifice, draw a card. But there are so many other mechanics that can take advantage of this effect. So we've got Evoke, Echo, Exploit, Devour, Fading. The list just goes on and on. Oh, and I get to talk about one of my favorite cards, Scroll of Fate, again. So you can tap it to manifest a creature card from your hand into play. You sacrifice it, and then at the end of the turn, it's going to come back into play face up with Lifeline. Now, of course, this also works with all of your opponent's creatures as well. So I like to make sure that I'm running white in the decks that I have this with. That way I can make sure I can exile their creatures, not just destroy them. So most of the cards that I feature are pretty cheap. This card's actually somewhere between $30 to $40, but I will point out that is in part because it is on the reserve list. So when you're spending $30 to $40 for this card, you are actually making an investment. It's pretty much never going to drop below $30 ever again. If you play any type of sacrifice heavy decks at all, this is your lifeline to victory.